The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Andrew, how are you?
Rik, not too bad. It's a bit strange sitting just maybe half a kilometer from you, but in a
I was
completely
thinking
different.
that as well.
We should maybe have recorded this in person
Yeah.
with all the recordings I'm doing today.
Yeah.
But
It's
anyway,
a hectic Belgian week for you, isn't it?
it is 15 hours of travel just to be able to come and do our think tanks. But based on last night's session, well worth the 15 hours of arduous travel.
Couldn't agree
Man, that
more.
was a fantastic session last. But we won't dwell on that one. We'll maybe talk about that one at a later time. Today, we're here to talk about your blog and your
Yeah, maybe like
insights from Luxembourg.
exactly some reflections from Luxembourg, and maybe already looking forward to Amsterdam in a way because it's exactly the same topic. But man, Luxembourg seems far away.
And it was
I don't know how it feels with you, but for me, it feels like it's ages away.
yes, same.
So
It's only a month away, wasn't
yeah,
it? But I had to refresh my memory on what it was all about. So much has happened in between. But it was very interesting sessions on tokenization, stable coins, and new rails. That was lots of exciting things there. Kicking off with Thomas from Visa. There were a couple of things that surprised me and some that didn't. I mean, one of the most obvious things is that Visa is heavily involved in the whole cryptocurrency stablecoin space. Not surprising to me because I would assume that Visa merely considers that as yet another currency.
yeah, no, absolutely.
It's,
Or at least
it's
getting
yet
a
another.
rail next to the schemes, next to open bank initiatives they already support, etc. So just
Rik,
trying to remain relevant themselves.
yeah,
But
we got a bit of a
what do you
bashing the other
remember?
day for using that term rails, Rik.
Yeah, that was another context.
Because Visa themselves would be considered rails, pipes to put where, and the cryptocurrencies, tokenized assets are things that move on those rails. And maybe Visa would even be using the infrastructure, public blockchain, as their own new rail, new infrastructure. But I think in that context, from the outside, people would simply view Visa as the rails, as it were, just for the sake of disambiguation
Yeah.
and lack of confusion. But of course, what's different about this particular currency moving across their rails is that it's programmable. That makes it very different to any other fiat currency that goes across their rails,
Is it?
which opens up new
Is
possibilities.
it? You have money solutions that exist where you can only use them for a limited amount of cases. You have examples of for example, the gambling blocker at
Mhm.
Monzo, etc. It's not programmable money, but we do have technology that allows for limiting the options.
Limited use, and I think cards have had that all the time. We've got categories, spending categories and cards and things, but stablecoins do take it to a new level.
Sure. Yeah.
The thing that was an eye-opener to me was just the scale and the breadth at which Visa is involved. I can remember a statistic that Thomas had mentioned there, that they have over 130 card-linked, stablecoin-linked card programs across 40 different countries
How
in the
many?
world already. 130 stablecoin-linked card programs, which meant that these were cards that were issued that have stablecoin as the underlying usage currency that is used. So it's not fiat at all. And that happened in a short time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big eye-opening stat that came out of that one. And it caught me a little bit by surprise because, as you've known for a long time, I'm a bit of a crypto skeptic when it comes to currency. I've always been a big advocate of blockchain.
Stablecoin is not
And
crypto.
Well, and this is the thing is that I've got to keep those separated in my head. Stable coins is not crypto. Crypto assets is not the same as cryptocurrency. And when it comes to crypto assets, that was something that came through very strong is there is a role for banks to play in this new world.
Mhm.
And one of those is crypto custody, crypto asset, crypto treasury. Those were all things that I think came through quite strong,
Mm.
including in the panel that followed the first two presentations by Thomas and Benny. And there was a soundbite that came out of, I think it might have been Benny's presentation, where he said there is a transition that he's seeing from ideology to structural integration. I think stable coins are pulling the whole crypto conversation from what might previously have been perceived by bankers as being a bit of a fanatics thing. Cryptocurrencies were a bit out there, but stable coins is something that professional bankers can understand. And it's no longer perceived as being an ideological thing. It's becoming part of the structure. And I think that was also came through in your blog, about the new rails and how do banks remain relevant in this new world order.
Yeah, aside from that, it's also that's where I think the input from HSBC became relevant, although they asked me not to quote them on it. The tokenization of all kinds of assets that we know today that become tokenized and leading to much more streamlined flows, etc., which was a big chunk of second part discussion. Is there anything that you'd like to share about that here as well?
No, you've got me on that one. Where was your head going on that?
Well, no, I had a lot of discussions about that also with Roel Van Noten, the associate partner of Avantage Capital Markets, with whom we'll have another think tank session in the near future, about the fact that through tokenizing assets, you open a whole new box of opportunities, both for the customer, but also, and maybe predominantly, for the bank, and leading to much more transparency, efficiency in the back office, etc., and allowing like the instant clearing and settlement of assets, where today often you need to still wait a couple of days before you have those things settled. And because of the size, the value of those assets, they can make a world of difference.
I think when we talking about tokenized assets and custody, it would be rude not to bring up the fact that we have Zodiac Custody joining a panel in Amsterdam. I had a very interesting interview with them.
Okay. Yep.
Which hasn't yet been released. I'm waiting for approval of that interview to be released.
Give me some teasers, Andrew. Give me some teasers.
Well, but the purpose of the interview was mainly for me as a skeptic to find out what the fraud was like in digital assets and what institutional grade custody meant, and how the whole interview I'd come at it from a fraud angle. Me being a skeptic. Okay, so this crypto stuff, is that more susceptible or less susceptible to fraud? And we had a whole conversation around custody and the importance of custody. Just for an interest's sake, all assets held by Zodiac Custody are in cold wallets. None of their wallets are digitally connected. They are literally cold, disconnected.
And all
drives,
crypto assets?
Basically, all crypto assets. Yes. I mean, that's what Zodiac Custody is all about crypto assets. And I won't give away anything more about whether or not fraud is worse or better. But it's going to be interesting to have them also on the panel at
different profile
Amsterdam.
than who you spoke to, chief product officer.
Yes.
So it's going to be
completely
relevant, especially in combination with two other profiles, the innovation lead digital assets at Rabobank, and then on the other hand, the supervisor with the Nederlandse Bank. So that's going to be an interesting one indeed.
And when we're talking about the
by a director of BCG who's been involved in that space at least for 10 to 15 years. So
Wow.
a true veteran
Yeah, right from the very beginning. When you brought up the regulator as well, that I think was something that it was very good that we started our series of discussions that included stablecoins, crypto assets, and everything like that in Luxembourg, because I think Luxembourg is at the forefront of the regulation. You know, if you're thinking about MiCA and regulation like that, and Luxembourg itself as a financial center, I think that they very much on the front foot when it comes to looking at the role that banks will be playing in the future in this whole thing. So it was quite fitting that we started in Luxembourg and went forward. I am going to throw one last curveball in, though, when we're talking about rethinking relevance. And it's something that I think banks have to think a lot about going forward. And I am going to bring up my favorite topic of AI. And I personally think that the confluence of AI and stablecoins is going to be a big shakeup, you know, whether it's micro atomic payments, that kind of thing, programmable money, AI and agentic AI, the agentic future of banking requires money that works at a code level. And I think that we are going to see rapid and massive changes in the whole way that concept of money even, and the way that money moves in the very near future. And I think with that, we'll leave on handing over to the segment with you and Roel, who will probably speak much more eloquently and knowledgeably about this topic than me, because I'm still learning so much and have so much to learn about this. So I'm looking forward to our sessions in Amsterdam and continuing in Brussels.
Let's have a look what Roel Van Noten, associate partner at Avantage Reply, had to say about the conversations we had in Luxembourg. He wasn't there, but he did read my blog, so that's how he got a taste of what was going on. So with him, we spoke another 10 minutes about the topic that we've been discussing here with Andrew now.
Over to you and Roel.
This week, I wrote a blog about the topics, the discussions we had at the Banking Conference 2026 Luxembourg on stablecoins, tokenized assets, and virtual currencies. With me today, I have Roel Van Noten. He's associate partner at Avantage Capital Markets, and with him, I'll discuss this week's blog a bit deeper in detail. Very welcome, Roel. Glad to have you in our show. The blog that I let you read up front is based on a panel and a couple of sessions, as I explained, at the Banking Conference Luxembourg. It's pretty amazing how that space evolved over the past few years, isn't it? It went from a lot of proof of concepts to very concrete stuff and projects that we see today.
Yeah, indeed. But I would also say finally, because I was in consulting 10, 12, 13 years ago. And back then, they were also investing heavily in blockchain. I also remember clients starting doing privately some crypto trading, proposing digital assets to their management and then being shut down, I guess. But so finally, it's coming to fruition, I would say. But the technology has been there. I think it's more the regulation around it, acceptance by regulators that led to this institutionalization and the products being released to the public, I would say.
Yeah, no, I recognize that. I had to do a presentation about it at Cybels, the evolution of where we came from. I also had another conversation last week with director of BCG, Sander van Loosbroek, who will be one of the speakers in Amsterdam. And he's involved in project in that space already for close to 15 years. So you're absolutely right. It took quite some time before the technology matured. Where do you see most value from both a macro perspective and from a banking perspective in that space?
Well, I'm probably a bit biased. I come out of trading, treasury, that area. But there, when you see how much effort goes into building tools to match trades, confirmations, reconcile settlements, it's a huge expense. And there, of course, there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained. But that, of course, is in the, let's say, the belly of the beast. The clients or the customers, the end users, they don't see that. I think there what will have a lot of impact is that some assets that are now available to invest in for a very restricted group can be fractionalized, can be made available for the wider public.
Yeah. So on the one hand, you see, on a macro point of view, the fractionalization, maybe even democratization of finance in a way, a new way of democratization in finance. And on the other hand, on the bank side, more efficiency gains. Is it correct that if I say improvement of existing process, or is it complete redesign according to you?
It's a mix, but I think we are now getting, as we discussed before, we're coming in a more mature phase. I think that mature phase is still restricted to where certain parts of the products are being taken over.
Mm-hmm.
It will take more time to have products that are fully embedded in the blockchain, I would say.
Yeah. You read the blog. Do you agree with the experts' arguments about the need for banks in these new networks?
Yes, I do. And it's because not everybody is, let's call it a finance nerd like us. For the general public, they only become familiar with these types of products when their trusted bank proposes them to them, let alone for them to invest in them. They need to be sure that there is some framework around it, some security. There's been crypto exchanges that grew to a huge size and then collapsed. I think for most people to become active in that space, they need to have a regulator overlooking the players that they interact with. So in that sense,
Yeah,
yes.
there were some of the arguments used, and maybe I should have framed that for people who haven't read the blog. But a lot of like the banks often fell back on we need trust in the system, we need proper governance models, maybe even a fallback solution in case things go wrong. And of course, when you decentralize all of that, most of that goes down whenever a story breaks. And that's where banks are, of course, masterminds in building fallback solutions, making sure that every door is closed, that you don't have a half open door just in case things go wrong, etc.
And they also have a wider portfolio of products. So if one thing goes wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean the collapse of the whole institution.
Absolutely. How do you think that this evolution towards tokenized assets, tokenized bonds, etc., will affect the way banks deal with this, with these bonds, with these assets in the back office?
We already touched upon the settlement and the matching of the different flows, but I think there's also a lot of complexity that can be decentralized. Now you have a certain contract that's being written, and then the intricacies need to be embedded in the central platforms the bank uses. That takes quite some effort. Also, over time, more different flavors come up, while with this technology, the translation from the contract into the settlement flow can be embedded. So it doesn't necessarily have to be covered by the bank itself.
Yeah, so what this will lead to is much more automatization, and a much smaller back office as well, I assume.
Yeah, more streamlined and with less exception flows. Although there's some things you still cannot do without, you need to account for the different transactions and report them to the regulator as well.
Yeah, but all of that can probably, especially with the rise of AI and all its promises, if you bring all of that together, I can imagine that a lot of that can be done with much fewer people in the future.
That's the idea. Although evolutions in the past have not necessarily reduced headcount, people start doing other things, maybe things that bring more value.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In the blog, I also shared that waiting to see what happens next is no longer neutral for banks. So in the current state of development, waiting is an explicit choice not to take action in a way. We've seen how it evolved. We've seen how it matured. We also see many proof of concept, but also very concrete value propositions from financial institutions, both to other financial institutions and to big corporates. Do you think that wait and see approach still is a smart choice within the capital markets industry?
But I think waiting as such is not a good idea. in the sense that there is a new reality, and as a professional, as a bank, it's your responsibility to deal with it. You need to embed it in your strategy. You need to make sure your risk appetite framework takes it into account. But I don't think that you necessarily have to jump on everything and start doing it yourself. You can make the choice of being strictly a retail bank and stick to the more traditional finance. Of course, there's a certain client base that comes with it. There's a certain set of multiples that come with it. But if you accept that and that's close to your DNA, that's fine. But you do have to have some knowledge to look into the new reality and embed it in your strategy.
Yeah, no, that was like the message in Luxembourg too, especially in the capital markets industry, that like you have three options. One is build all yourself. One is work with partners that maybe know it better or know how to build it cheaper. And then the other thing is don't do anything. And about that don't do anything, they put it as an option. But of course, they were biased as well because they're all have actively involved in it. They said that like that waiting may not be the right choice today because that means that you will be made redundant in the future. But of course, all of that also depends how the new infrastructure is built. I can imagine that soon will have tokenized assets that can work both on traditional platforms as more progressive platforms, where the more progressive platforms have many more options to deal with those tokenized assets. But yeah, it's still kind of an open question to what extent can we afford, or can these organizations afford to keep waiting? And if so, until when? Because right now it is going very, very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe any last comment, or was it a very good conclusion of what you just shared?
But I think at least look at what's happening. But it's like that with everything, with all the new evolutions. Take what fits your organization and your strategy and make the most of it.
Absolutely. All right. Roel, thank you very much for joining us. And I'm pretty sure that we'll speak again very, very soon. Bye.
Thank you and see you soon.